This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment.
Welcome back to Weights and Wealth. We have a very special interview for you today. If you are not a football fan, just go back and listen to one of our previous episodes. Today is going to be all about the NFL draft and fantasy football. You may have heard Nick and I mention before that we love playing Dynasty Fantasy Football. So today we have a podcast from Charleston. We're in Charleston, and Casey has the FF Dynasty Podcast, and we're going to be talking all about Dynasty Fantasy Football. So for all of our listeners that play fantasy football, I think you're going to love this episode. Casey, you want to start us off with the shout out and the Dynasty Fantasy Football wisdom of the week?
Sure. Shout out to my mom for getting me in the positions that I'm in. So appreciate you.
Great. And for the Dynasty wisdom of the week? Patience and, kind of persistence. Just staying active is going to be the two biggest things in Dynasty pretty much always. Yeah. Those relate really well to the normal weights and wealth side of things as well when we talk about investing and just being consistent in the gym. Moving into a little bit about Casey's background. Casey, you said you started the FF Dynasty Podcast 7 years ago? Yeah.
So we're roughly 7 years in right now. Started just kind of having fun with two of my friends, listening to kind of what was out there, and it's not like it is now where there's anything you want to listen to. Like the Dynasty space and fantasy space in general just was kind of small, and we were like, we could do this. And so we started doing it and just having fun, and would do like 3-hour podcasts of just, talking and having a good time. And then we kind of, a couple of years ago, we're like, all right, let's make a run at this. This is kind of going, decent. We're just having fun before, but now we're, putting content out 3-4 times a week and making a run at making it sort of a business. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of learning. Yeah. The business side of things is certainly always interesting. I own a business here as well, just as my day job. And so some of that kind of relates, but it's completely different. So that's probably been the most kind of fun, is learning all those things of just podcasting and how to turn it into a business, what matters, what doesn't matter. So been fun. Absolutely. When I started playing in 2008, I think Jack started playing fantasy like 2010, 2011 timeframe. But probably 2008, something like that. But back then you had like ESPN rankings and Yahoo rankings and magazines, and that was it. And so now, it's even 7 years ago, podcasts weren't really a big thing for fantasy. And now you go on Spotify and there's so many podcasts, but I think yours is definitely one of the better ones that I've come across for Dynasty. There's some people will just put out basically the ESPN rankings in their Dynasty podcast, and it's like, I'm not getting any analysis from you, but you and some of the guests that you have on, is it Shevdor? What's his name? His name is Justin Curry, but we call him, he's goes by Chev. Okay. He's on the team at this point now. He's a regular, and is part of our rotation that comes through. But we've had pretty much any guest from the industry that you could think about, we've had on and come through there. So always interesting conversations, getting different perspectives, but typically it's one of me, Big Co, and Chev at this point.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things about fantasy, I think, is trying to get different perspectives, because when you look at a lot of these players, a lot of people have very different rankings. So before we get into the Dynasty and fantasy side of things, let's just hit the NFL draft real quick, since that's happening this week. So is there anyone in the draft that you think is going to be like a riser or a faller, different from where they're currently mocked?
I would like to say I think Shedeur might go a little higher than what we've been seeing recently. I feel like there's just such a need on those top teams that even if it isn't the first go around of what they do, maybe they kind of trade back in and try to get him. Yeah. That could just be me saying, I think Shedeur is better than people are giving him credit for. And it's such a position of need for a lot of teams. And, quite frankly, I don't really understand how the Giants don't, as far as the coaching staff and the GM, like to me, that would seem like a layup to get your job extended for a year, right? Like you now have a new quarterback in there if you can show some life at the end of the season. Whereas, if you're a Giants fan, sorry, but Russell Wilson and Jameis are not going to get it done for you.
Hey, Jameis is fun though.
Jameis is very fun.
Jameis for fantasy.
Yeah, the Jameis roller coaster is fun to watch for sure. Moving into, like you just mentioned.
Hang on, how about you guys? Who would be somebody that you guys would?
I agree with Shedeur, especially considering the Saints' new position with Derek Carr, maybe not even playing at all.
Sure.
And then I think Tet McMillan probably will wind up falling. I've heard a bunch of NFL teams, he's fallen to like 3+ on their wide receiver rankings. So probably end of first. I don't know.
Yeah, I think both of the Iowa State wide receivers, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, when I watched their tape, I was blown away because I typically start looking through all 22 tape. I don't really watch college football, but January, February timeframe, I'll start scouting the rookies whenever I have a little bit of free time. If I've got 10 minutes, I'll pull up some all 22 tape, watch a game or two. And both of the Iowa State guys, I watched Higgins first, and I started noticing what Noel was doing in Higgins' tape, and I was like, wow, these guys are both fantastic. I don't know how they're so far down the charts, and they've recently been rising up quite a bit. But I mean, I've got them both like top 6 or 7, I think, in my wide receiver rankings, which is a lot higher than consensus, I think.
I think those are both astute observations from you guys. Ted is certainly, at a minimum, seems like maybe 12 to the Cowboys is like a popular one right now. And then we've been talking about it all year, or all since January, is, Higgins seems to get way more love in the actual NFL streets than the fantasy streets.
Yeah.
And so that's it. And then another observation is watching the all 22, if you are a dynasty player, is 100% the way to go. And I know that there's not a lot of people doing it, because when you find it on YouTube per se, we have different avenues of getting it, but when you watch it on YouTube, you'll see like 300 views on the all 22 stuff. And then there'll be 30,000 views on the highlights. And I'm telling you, the highlights are not going to get it.
Oh, no.
Get you the actual information you want. But by watching that kind of stuff and then picking, like, I did the exact same thing you did. Like, Noel just kept popping on these situations when you're zooming. Like, he's not even getting the ball on this play, but he's open. He's So I think that's a very good way to, good process there.
He looks like a slot guy. I mean, he's like 5'10", and he's running these deep routes, really good breaks in and out of the routes. He's deep in the route tree, 8, 9, 10, and like, he just looks fantastic. And he's a really good contested catch guy too. All of our Dynasty League mates are going to be listening to this, since we're sending it to them, and since they gave us questions for today to ask you. So I'm kind of giving away a little draft strategy there, but I basically sold all of my 2nd and 3rd round picks for this year a couple of years ago, because usually I don't like 2nd and 3rd round picks. I don't find them very valuable. Although this year I think there's a ton of value in 2nd and 3rd rounders. Even though those hit rates are typically a lot lower.
For sure. Now there's a lot of depth in this class. That's the strength of the class is some depth.
Yeah.
Whether it's positional as far as skills, or like offensive, defensive line is very deep as far as the NFL draft is concerned as well. So
so I guess moving into Dynasty, since we're kind of already there, for anyone that doesn't know what Dynasty fantasy football is, do you want to give them a quick elevator pitch on why they should play Dynasty instead of regular fantasy football?
Yeah, I can tell you why we started playing. Was like, I was always a year ahead in redraft and not getting rewarded for it. Right? I'd have a bench full of guys who then, like, the next year were like, damn, these guys are crushing it now, and I got nothing out of this. So it was like, what can we do? And the fun of the year-long being able to have value of trading rookie picks, and all the different formats are always fun, but it's just, to me, the year-long aspect and the different values and things you can get from the rookie draft are the whole reason to me to play Dynasty. Is like, it's just a much more, there's still a ton of luck involved in everything at fantasy football wise, but like you could focus in a lot better in the dynasty sphere and get rewarded for how much time and effort you're putting in, at least from a value wise from the players that you're getting. Maybe it doesn't result in wins every year because it's hard to win every year, but I think you get some of the less serious or the more serious players in and less serious players out in redraft, which fantasy football should be fun in general, but
it's a competition.
Right.
Yeah. The reason we started, Nick and I started our first Dynasty League, what was it?
So let's try 2020 or 2021 maybe.
Yeah, it was right as we were getting out of college. Our group that we had played fantasy football with in college, we wanted to like stay in touch more as we were not going to be around each other anymore. And we decided to do Dynasty, hoping that year-roundness of Dynasty would keep it just going better.
Yeah,
and
better camaraderie for sure.
Yeah, our group chat is popping every week of the year with Dynasty. So
yeah, no, that's a good point because I've got plenty of people who have been in and out of my life. So it's like, you go through eras of your life of what you did and what you did. And I've just got all these different eras of life that I still play fantasy football with. So that is a really cool part of it for sure.
How many leagues do you play in right now?
I don't really play that much redraft. I might do one redraft a year. I've moved into, if I'm going to do redraft, it's more best ball, just so I don't have to manage the roster. Yeah. Because I don't really like that part of redraft at this point. I'm probably in like 10 to 12 dynasty leagues, and I co-manage some of them. I try not like, that's not even a lot. Like some of these other people are like 30, and there's management tools that like you can just all be on one website where like you don't have to go to all the different ones. And so I've got them basically almost all on Sleeper at this point, which is really, I used to play my fantasy league was like one of the only options, which is like the platform's great, but it's dinosaur like in presentation. The app's like a third party app. So, and you have to pay for it. Yeah. So there's a lot more stuff you can do with it, but Sleeper came along and now I've pushed almost everything into there. So that's a nice feature, but yeah, 10 to 12, I'd say. And then I'll do a lot of best ball. So
we just have 2 going right now, which I mean I want to start more like we keep talking about starting more leagues and like trying to change up the rules a little bit. So do you have any like fun rules you like to play with? I mean one idea I had is like salary caps, kind of like the NFL, which I've been trying to figure out how to work that in. I just can't.
It's not in Sleeper. You have a spreadsheet.
You can go. There's websites. When we first started, I forget what it was called, but I actually just got an email from a different one that was like, oh, we could advertise on but there's salary cap stuff. For me, I think there's a lot of different fun things you can do, especially if you're in 1 or 2, but like I want to keep it semi-standard because it's like, that's going to give me the best value and edge. Cause as soon as we start adding goofy rules, which is fun, but like, that's going to take any advantage that I have out of it. Plus in talking about it all the time, like, when you start like points per carry is something easy to throw in there to just give extra value to a running back or whatever, or points per first down are easy, pretty normal ones. But then like, I've been asked to join all sorts of leagues with like, rules that are just wild. And you're like, this is cool, but like, I'm good. Like I don't need to learn anything else and try to figure anything else. I will say, what you do in this situation when you get into a league, and you should do this any league, but like any league that isn't like the standard scoring or whatever, even if it's points per carry or points per first down, you can go into your settings and you can look at who scored the most points from the previous year. And that will kind of give you a better idea of who's more valuable in this setting. So like if you go to, like I play tight end premium, I'm pretty much, if I'm joining a league, it's Superflex tight end premium. I'm not playing. And so like if you but if it goes from half a point to 1 point in tight end premium, right? So you're getting an extra half a point per catch or an extra full point per catch. You're going to want to go to your settings and then look at the tight ends and compare those points that, like Trey McBride last year still didn't score as many points as Jamar Chase. And we know Jamar Chase broke fantasy last year, but it's close. So now the value, like when you're in your startup or whatever, like those tight ends need to come off the high volume tight ends are going to come off the board a lot more. And if you can kind of hoard those tight ends, you'll have more value throughout the process.
Speaking of hoarding tight ends, Jack, can you pull up the Flyers Fantasy League?
Yeah.
So,
and
Nick is destroying with the tight ends in this league. So he's got Bowers, who I traded him the pick 104 last year for him, but he already had McBride, so he's got the top two. And it's a 14-team league, so he's got all kinds of offers. But you want to ask for advice on that one offer you've got?
Oh yeah, which I didn't like it. I'm like, it's sitting up there, Jack. I don't know if you can actually, maybe it's not, but I mean, he offered me Gibbs and Isaiah Likely for Brock Bowers, Devontae Adams, and a second round 26. So, I mean, I didn't like that. I mean, like, I could use an upgrade at tight end. I mean, I have Jacobs, Breece Hall, and
That running back,
and Derrick Henry, but I don't know. I just thought that was too much. And still, I mean, like, I do flex McBride sometimes. Like, I usually start Bowers, but McBride can be flexed.
And is it just regular?
It's one QB.
One QB.
No,
this is our first league.
No tight end premium.
Gotcha. No premium, and he wants Bowers or McBride?
He wants Bowers and Devontae Adams.
And a 26 second round pick.
All right, run that by me one more time.
So he offered me Gibbs and Likely for Bowers, Devontae Adams, and my 2026 second round. So probably a late second.
Yeah. If I'd probably take the second off of there.
Yeah, that's what I told him.
Yeah, I wouldn't. If I were you, I mean, obviously I'm competing against you. So I won the championship last year. Nick, you were speaking about luck. Nick's team is amazing, but he had terrible luck last year. Like Cooper Kupp died going into the playoffs and laid several goose eggs. So that killed Nick.
Jalen Hurts
got hurt. Breece Hall was kind of out of it. So even though Nick's got an amazing team, he got really unlucky when the playoffs started. But like, dude, I'd give you Kyron for just like Bowers or McBride. Then you don't have to also give up Adams because you need Adams. But anyways, we can talk trades later.
So the way I would look at that is no premium. So I'm not going to put a huge value on the tight end position. You can flex him without premium, but usually once the premium comes in, that and then I know I can flex him. I would probably I don't mind basically if you could break that down to Devontae and one of the tight ends for Gibbs, and who else were you getting?
Likely.
Yeah, I mean,
Likely.
You throw him on the bench for a minute because if once Andrews may be out the door now, every time Likely's gotten a shot, he's been rock solid. I actually don't mind that in this situation. And then you got Gibbs to go along with those other three running backs. I mean, you know, in a non-premium situation, I'm not all that interested in hoarding tight ends, but Bowers is potentially the one for the next 10 years. But.
I mean, Bowers put up the same amount of points as Neighbors last year, and people still have Neighbors ranked higher, even though he's a receiver. And I don't know, I still give an edge to a tight end, obviously, that, can put up that many points.
Right. You have a positional edge pretty much every week in that situation there. So
speaking about these different position values, so this goes for regular fantasy and for dynasty, but like for a while there, running backs were starting to kind of seem not as valuable as wide receivers. But then a couple of years ago, all the defenses started playing cover 2 high shell and kind of blunting these huge pass attacks that we had around the league. And so like if you look at my team, I built my team solely around the running back position. I kind of just transformed it. So like I've got Saquon, Kyron, Jonathan Taylor, Mixon, I just traded away. But like how I won last year was just building my team around running backs and playing elite running backs in the flex. So do you think this trend of running backs getting more valuable in fantasy is going to continue? Because the constant dynasty advice from a lot of shows is always build around those young wide receivers because they're going to last a lot longer than the running backs. But I mean, these running backs, they're starting to play. It always used to be like 26, 27 was the age cliff. Trade away your running backs by that age. Now, like a lot of them are 28, 29, still successful. Obviously, you've got Saquon, Derrick Henry, top 2 running backs last year. What do you think about that kind of change up in the value?
So, as far as speaking on the wide receivers, it's certainly the best currency in Dynasty, right? Because that's the narrative, and it's not wrong per se. And to your point of how defenses or offenses or however you want to look at it have adjusted is correct. Like more shell, and you've gone from bigger guys to smaller, faster guys. So there's an advantage if you can have like the Eagles last year, and the Eagles kind of played it like you would want to play Dynasty, right? Yeah. You're ready. You go and make the big investment at the running back position, and it takes you over the top, right? So that's a way to look at it. I've never really shied away from running backs per se. I think there's a lot of value. You did see a lot of running backs stay healthy last year.
Yeah, it was an odd year that way. Sure.
But I think I don't know how much of a. This is a tough question because I feel like there's a lot of multiple angles of ways to kind of go here.
Yeah, I mean, I also have Garrett Wilson. He's just not in there because I'm over the roster limit. But I just traded Mixon. I just traded Mixon in the 105. I sent you the text the other day when we were texting. So moving on to some other Dynasty stuff. As far as like Superflex, do you always, in a startup for Superflex, do you always go quarterback round 1, round 2, or does it kind of depend on where you're picking? Because typically in Superflex drafts, it's always grab your quarterbacks right at the beginning. In the startup we did last year, I went 0 quarterback. I didn't take a quarterback till like the 9th round. But because of that, I have CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua. Who else? I have a bunch of really, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, DK. So I've got like a ton of wide receivers. And then I was able to grab Penix, who I know you're a big fan of. I drafted him earlier. I went 2 rounds early on him. JJ McCarthy was injured, so I was able to grab him at kind of a value.
Sure.
Whenever there's a rookie draft, like when Dobbins and Etienne were rookies, I took both of them. I like to, in Dynasty, kind of take those injured players because people will slide them down their rankings. You can get a ton of value on them.
Well, I took Cam Akers that year, so it didn't work out for me.
But yeah, I guess what do you think about like taking those injured players and then also that strategy for a Superflex startup as far as do you have to take the quarterbacks early or can you kind of wait?
The injured players, that's a good rebuilding strategy is to kind of go in there and target those values down. You're in a rebuilding situation. You don't need the points, and you can get them for you can typically maybe even trade like an older guy off your team for somebody who's hurt on their team who's a lot younger with more value. So that's a good one of the poles of kind of rebuilding for me. And then Superflex quarterbacks, to me, it always and it's also like I've started doing a lot of 3rd round reversals for Superflex drafts. So instead of having it snake all the way on the 3rd round, it kind of pings back to the other side. And typically that was because you were so heavy in quarterbacks to start the draft, right? So it would give the guys on the back end in the 3rd round an advantage to come back and be able to have, the first dibs on the 3rd round rather than that double up from the guys who just took the quarterbacks. But what we're seeing right now, and it's only because I'm knee deep in this thing and I we have our own ADP and all those other things, like not drafting a quarterback, like being in the back end and getting that 3rd round reversal, like the quarterbacks currently, and I think the answer to the question is I think it changes year over year, right? Right now you could, listen, if Patrick Mahomes drops to 112, which happens a lot right now, you take him, right? And then I don't mind coming back and grabbing like a Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is going to be great. I like the situation that he's in. But you can, for right now, I think the ultimate strategy is passing on them, grabbing the Gibbs and the Bijans and the whatever receivers are there, and you can fill out this crazy starting lineup, and then you can come back and get Trevor and Baker and Dak and Penix, and there's through the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round even you could still get JJ if you want, if you're confident in that. So right now to me I'm almost not in a 0 quarterback phase, but like definitely wait because and listen, every draft room is going to be a little different. Like they could all get gobbled up through there, and then you're sitting here maybe struggling because of the fourth round, isn't loaded with quarterbacks. But I would say well over average, you're seeing guys like Baker, Dak, Trevor, Penix, Goff, guys that you can win with. And the edge and Superflex, depending on what your scoring is. If it's, let's just call it 5 points a touchdown pass, like 4 points, you're going to value the legs a little more. 6 points, Burrow, and the guys who throw for a lot more touchdowns, they gain value back a little bit. So you obviously want a little bit of legs in there if it's lower TD threshold, and it's always a good floor to have, right? Yeah. But you're still like, I think Cam Ward's going to be just fine. We talked about Shedeur to start this thing off, and those guys are later, right? So there's quarterbacks to kind of be had right now where the value to me is almost no quarterbacks early on, unless it's a Mahomes or somebody really good kind of falling to you. And going back to that running back question real quick and the age curve, I think that was a really good observation. Is like, we had this long run of running backs like David Johnson and Gurley and all those guys, and they affected that curve because they went out early. And I don't think that data is correct. I think what we're seeing now is going to be the correction of that data, right? Of saying 29 to 31 is more the age fall off cliff. So I think you're going to end up getting 2 more years of productivity out of running backs. Like, is CMC going to be all right? I'm not sure. I think CMC could go play slot and it'd be fine, right? He's a unicorn. But like, Saquon's not slowing down. Derrick Henry's ridiculous. Like, Alvin Kamara's still really good. Yeah. Joe Mixon was good. If Aaron Jones is healthy, he's good, right? Jacobs is one, like the guys who kind of play like Jacobs and have more mileage. You could see, maybe the cliff's a little sooner, but I think that was a really good observation. And I think that is going to stretch to the 29-30. The next time we see a big data, that curve is going to push further that way. So sorry to jump all around.
No, that's a great response. And definitely really good point on the guys like David Johnson, Gurley, DeMarco Murray.
Le'Veon just,
Yeah, those guys
were the
4 or 5
pillars.
amazing years, and then they were just done. So that, I'm not sure. I mean, I think a lot of that was injuries. I'm not sure what else kind of affected that, if it was just chance. But
mostly injury.
Yeah.
And then contract stuff with Le'Veon.
Right, and they were trying to figure out what running backs were worth and devalue him, and the Le'Veon thing was crazy. That was super weird, right? And he was already somebody who athletically, that wasn't his calling card, right? It wasn't. So you thought maybe he could be good forever, but that was certainly a weird situation. But I think a lot of it was just injuries, unfortunate things that happened to those guys. So, and I mean, Nick Chubb was up there somewhere. Like,
I traded a first for him after his injury a year ago.
But he came into the league and people were like, "Oh, he's never going to last." And I mean, you got fantastic years out of Nick Chubb from a devastating knee injury, and then unfortunately you had another one. But that one, kind of, you knew that there was always a little bit of a built-in discount with Chubb, so you don't take that for granted as much as maybe some of these other guys. But I mean, Saquon could easily be productive into 31, right? I mean, there's just, I think these guys, and this is kind of speaks to what you guys do as a podcast, like the guys who want to take care of their body and want to be great. And obviously anybody's body could sort of fail them a little bit, but the way that these guys are approaching it, especially these really high end ones, and how much money and time and effort they're putting into wellness, body treatment, all that kind of stuff. I think science wise should theoretically extend a lot of these careers. Some of them don't want to be great, and that's something that you have to, they've always just been on their athletic high horse, and they don't want to come in and put the work in, and they're just going to like Zeke, I think he was awesome, and a lot of mileage on Zeke, right? But how much did he give about being a great running back? I don't know.
On our side as Packers fans, Eddie Lacy.
Beast mode.
Old cheeseburger Eddie there,
yeah. I guess moving into rookies, you mentioned with the quarterbacks that have legs versus don't have legs. You mentioned Cam and Shedeur. What do you think about Jackson Dart? Because when I watch his tape, I love the way he uses his legs, and I think there's a lot of fantasy points that are going to come out of that. I don't think he's like a Justin Fields, but Drake May, people don't realize how good he was with his legs. He was getting like 50 yards a game last year. I think Jackson Dart can kind of be in that almost Drake May type of range as far as rushing yards a game.
Yeah. So Dart isn't my favorite, but it's only because like when you look at Shedeur, I think processing is like his superpower, right?
Yeah,
like things don't get too big for him. His dad is who his dad is, positively or negatively. The thing that I'm not sure about Dart is, which it comes into like quarterback's the hardest position to evaluate, right? It's so much who gets a hold of you, where you go, who's developing you. Like if Mahomes went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's just not Mahomes. He's still going to make some crazy plays, but he's not up there in the Brady discussion already, right?
Yeah, I still don't think he is.
Right, whatever. But I think somebody like Pittsburgh gets a hold of Dart and maybe he could sit for a year. What I was getting at is Lane Kiffin's offense is pretty easy. They run a lot of the same concepts. He's kind of shows these guys where to go with the ball, which isn't the end all be all, but I feel like there's going to be some time where he has to figure out how to process the game and what to do. I think there is some good athleticism there that doesn't get counted for Jackson Dart. But like somebody like Arthur Smith, kind of, in that Tannehill kind of mold, could be really interesting for them, especially if Rodgers goes there for a year or something. I'd like to see Dart sit for a year, but no, I think that's a good call. Dart could go as like he seems to fit more what Kellen Moore likes and has seen from a quarterback than maybe what Shedeur would be at 9 for the Saints. So that could certainly be a possibility. If I'm the Saints, I trade that pick to somebody who might be thirsty for a quarterback, right? Like you got so many issues. You have a salary cap issue. Like just go. You got to.
Yeah, the Saints are a mess.
Right.
A quarterback every year.
Right. A quarterback can certainly help that with the contract that he has to get out of there. But you could kick that can down the road. Go with Rattler being the top sweepstakes in 2026 for a draft pick. Now, people say it's Arch. But there's a lot of stuff out there that say Arch isn't coming out until at least 27.
I don't think he's coming out until 27.
His family doesn't want the grandfather said he wants him to play 4 years. I think they all want him to play at least 3, which I agree with. Like, I think that's the change in quarterback. Like, we were seeing such a problem with quarterbacks coming in and not being developed correctly. But like, I do think that all these guys playing a lot more, like May is kind of the outlier there, right? In the last class that just came in. But we were in a weird quarterback situation for the league. We were like, quarterback play is right now. And like all of a sudden, and we don't know if Bo Nix and Penix and all those guys will pan out. But, I think the fact that a lot of those like Jaden Daniels would have been crucified for how much football he can't be good. If he's played 5 years. That was like the old thinking of quarterbacks and players previous to this kind of COVID era of quarterbacks coming in. And I think that actually really helped. It's just such a tough position. Like you need the reps, you need the time, you need all of those things on the field to just help you be ready for the next step.
And this is where it's like I think a lot of times people take stats and they kind of use stats that might not tell like the full picture or the full story. I think yards per route run is one of those stats that kind of misses some things sometimes, that people just kind of sort by yards per route run and say this guy's going to be great because he had a good number here. But like there are some stats that you can use to really hone in on success, especially with rookies. So if you look at quarterbacks that are taken in the first round, the success rate, the first round of the NFL draft, success rate there is only 50%.
Right. It's a coin flip.
But then if you take quarterbacks in the first round that also had, and I forget the number, but it's something like if they've had 36 college starts or more, then they're at like an 80% hit rate. So using some of these stats that do really conflate with success can set you up so that you're not just kind of guessing in your rookie drafts and Dynasty, and you're actually really making good educated guesses.
For sure.
And then you're not in a position as a 49ers fan taking Trey Lance, who had like
Right.
He had almost no starts in college.
Right. So I'll never begrudge a team for trying to do what Cleveland did by getting Watson in there, regardless of what baggage came or didn't come, or a team trading up to say, hey, we want this quarterback. But yeah, no, that probably wasn't. Looking back, obviously, it was a terrible decision. I think that was a little bit pre this new era that we just saw of more play, the better. Like you had, and if you're the Niners and you feel like you can develop, like they feel like they could probably win with a lot of quarterbacks. So you felt like you could, the fourth dimension of the Shanahan offense is a running quarterback, right? We just really haven't had it. And so that's just what you're trying to kind of bring in there. And whatever reason it was for the Lance thing not really working out, maybe he wasn't good or whatever. I think it was just unfortunate. Like he got hurt when he was going to get a chance, he kind of got hurt. And then Purdy comes in and you can't put that genie back in the bottle. We haven't even really seen Lance play at all. And maybe he just stinks, and so, but you can't get better without reps, and maybe we'll see a trajectory like Geno and Sam Darnold with somebody like Lance kind of down the line. I don't think the Cowboys were the team to develop any more from Lance. That was an odd choice for them to trade for him, but you're right. That was, don't do that.
You can never use logic for Jerry World. I mean, they just traded for Mingo as well. So it's always confusing there. But I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, my brother Jack is on the show with us today in place of Sean, since Sean hates sports. Moving on to what you're talking about with reps and stuff like that, I think when we start to look at rookies, especially rookie running backs, landing spot becomes a huge focus. So when I make my rookie rankings, because I love watching football and Dynasty fantasy football, so I go through, I watch the all 22 tape, I make my rankings just based off the tape, and then I do that before the draft, and then after the draft I have a huge adjustment in my rankings based off landing spot. So I guess what are some running backs in this draft class that you think are landing spot proof? Obviously Janty, not sure which other ones at the top there, and then what are some running backs that you think can, like, it's very landing spot dependent, whether that's an RJ Harvey or someone like that?
I think, you have a strong running back class. It's deep. The top 5 seem like they're probably pretty landing spot.
Can you say what your top 5 are? Mine are very, very different.
The consensus top 5 is, and it is my top 5. So you got Genty, Hampton, TreVeyon, Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, and Caleb Johnson, right? So those are the kind of the top 5 for the most part, consensus wise and NFL mock wise. Mm-hmm. Pretty much all of those guys don't make it out of the second round in almost any mock, right?
Yeah, sure.
And the teams that are the handful of teams that are kind of expected to draft those positions, they're all pretty good, and there really isn't an incumbent who's going to get crushed by it. Now, anything can happen in the NFL draft. It takes one, but right. So like you're seeing, Dallas maybe, but it's like Vegas, the Broncos, Chargers potentially, Steelers maybe, Cleveland. So those are a lot of like the big ones that those landing spots kind of go to. So I think all those guys are pretty landing spot. It doesn't really matter. There's some, like Bears are, could certainly be one. And like I had like Omarion Hampton right now is potentially like a lot of the Broncos things get mocked there. Like I think Omarion Hampton's good. I think TreVeyon Henderson fits better to what Sean Payton has historically done and fits in there. Same thing. Like I think TreVeyon Henderson fits better with the Bears as well, as far as like giving him a Gibbs, Ben Johnson, that is coming over from Detroit. Yep. I think that would make a lot of sense. But these guys who want the running backs and lean on the running backs and have good production with running backs, all those teams are teams, Pittsburgh, Omarion Hampton makes a lot more sense to me than Denver, right? Because his running style, the way he plays, it's a lot more physical, hard-nosed, north-south, not a lot of nonsense, loves the contact. So, I think there's some that for me personally would be better, but I don't think the landing spots. As far as the other side of things and some other running backs that would be dependent, I think Dylan Sampson, depending on where he lands, could really be a big swing of barometers of just kind of the player that he is and kind of who gets a hold of him. You mentioned RJ Harvey. He's an older player. He's 24.
Yeah.
He's a converted quarterback, so he hasn't even been playing the running back position all that long. So he could certainly be like, I think if somebody like a San Fran gets a hold of him in the 3rd or 4th round, that's going to be a huge swing on RJ Harvey's value. I think if he goes somewhere, let's say the Bengals draft him in the 4th round, I think that kind of deters his value a little bit. They have somebody like a Chase Brown who's decent enough, right, and could probably keep him off the field. So to me, it's almost as if who's there and in front of him and what can they steal the job or not. And of course anybody could. The later guys like Brashard Smith, if he gets into a situation that somebody knows how to use that kind of running back, he's only been playing running back for a year. He's a converted wide receiver. He's from SMU. But like we saw Tyrone Tracy have that same kind of trajectory last year. The Giants got a hold of him, couldn't keep him off the field. So Brashard Smith would be one where the landing spot is going to be, capital for running backs and really any of these players is going to be one of the biggest tells of like success, right? That's some of the biggest correlation is draft capital weighing the heaviest on those. And it shouldn't be the end all be all. But when you combine landing spots and capital, you can throw a lot of the analytics out there, but like capital is definitely, which makes sense logically.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the teams are making an investment in that.
Right.
Were you going to say something?
Do you see Cam Scatabo as being one of those guys as well?
Yeah. So Cam Scatabo would be like, if he goes somewhere like, again, the Steelers feel like a Cam Scat, like just to me, this is kind of like a feeling thing, but like Cam Scatabo is an outstanding receiver.
So much fun to watch.
And he's a lot of fun to watch. And recently, Daniel Jeremiah or one of those guys just came out and was like, the NFL is maybe a little lower than we in the media kind of think. And they just don't think he has the juice. And I just, I think there's plenty of juice there. And I think the receiving upside is fantastic. But like somebody like Pittsburgh or even somebody like I know I've said San Fran a few times, for the running back position, that's going to be a big jump up for a lot of people. Who was, I'm drawing a blank on who it was. They had him in the 1st round after he went to San Fran a couple of years ago. And it was a terrible, it'll come to me
Talking
eventually.
about running back?
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Elijah Mitchell? No, that was the 1st round.
No,
I'm trying to think.
They didn't take him in the 1st round. He was just selected by them, and he never was. Trey Sermon.
Okay.
Trey Sermon.
Yeah,
and then everybody had him in rookie drafts as like going in the back end of the 1st round. It was a terrible pick by both the Niners and him, but there was no reason for him to move up to that range. He's just wasn't that good.
Yeah.
But because of where he went, it got, because the Niners are pretty good with how running back play goes. But if Scatabo got to somewhere like San Fran, even if it's 4th or 5th round, you could think of the beginning of his career. They could, they just brought back Juszczyk, which I don't know how deep in the weeds everybody who listens to this is. But what Kyle Juszczyk does for that offense is huge. And Cam Scatabo is Kyle Juszczyk plus, right? So that could be like the beginning stages of how to use him. And then he could do so much more than what Juszczyk does in that offense and Juszczyk's like a fullback, but they use him in a variety of different ways. Like he's kind of just this jack of all trades for them. And that's probably the best situation for Scatabo to kind of get into, where he can kind of be in one of those Shanahan offenses that uses the diversity of like, he could go in there as a fullback, be a short yardage guy. He can come in and give you some sets at the running back position, but you can also use them as a receiver down the field. So those would be the guys who have ties, which half the league, I think at this point, is running some either McVay or Shanahan offense, right? So
let's talk about TreVeyon, because he's way up there on people's boards. Is he your 3rd ranked running back? He's not above Hampton, is he?
I like him. So I have Caleb Johnson as my 2nd running back.
No way, really?
And I probably so that's all a tier. So 1 is Genty, and then tier 2 is the other 4 guys that I mentioned.
Okay.
Right? It's Hampton. To me, that comes down to stylistically.
Yeah.
Like I like the play of TreVeyon and Caleb better than the play of Omar. Like just how they play differently than Judkins and Hampton. Those guys to me are hammers, right?
Yeah, I'm a big hammer guy.
Right.
I love it.
Which is and like if they go to the right spots, I'm going to be. I'm not taking any. Like I like them all. I think we've got a great next 4 there. I just particularly like the way that Johnson and Henderson play, like if you charted how they move, like Judkins and Hampton, all of their lines are going to be straight or kind of angular. Whereas where you watch Henderson and Caleb play, everything's a little more curved and bendy, and they have that like kind of curvier little movement to how they get the job done. I think they're all good receivers for the most part. I think TreVeyon probably has the most juice in that regard. I think TreVeyon has the highest ceiling going to. I think he's got if he goes to the right landing spot, I think he's got the biggest jump. To kind of be had.
So TreVeyon isn't even in my top 5 running backs based off tape. I think he's down around 7. So like kind of like a second round pick, which is way different than pretty much every other ranking I've seen. But the reason is when I was watching his tape, like the way he moves, as you were saying, I call it, when I'm writing down my notes, I call it lean. Like leaning. So there's some guys like Caleb Johnson, that kind of outside zone runner. He's kind of able to pick up speed as he's leaning. I think like Luther Burden kind of runs that way too. Jalen Royals, I would say. Yeah. But like I just kind of write
all my favorites.
I note that down as like lean is just kind of how it happens in my head. But like I see that with TreVeyon. But the problem is like whether he's running through the tackles or in open space, he has to weave through guys. The moment he meets any kind of contact, he goes down in like all the tape I watched. And typically when I watch all 22 tape, I'll only watch 3 or 4 games per guy because, it's not my full-time job. I'm just trying to do it in my little breaks throughout the day.
One day, maybe.
Yeah, but like the 4 games I watched for TreVeyon, every single time he had any sort of contact, it didn't even have to be like a hit or like a wrap up. It could just be like a little touch. He like always went down at first contact. I was like, this is not a running back that can survive in the NFL, in my opinion, especially when you're talking about NFL linebackers that are bigger and way faster than college. Like the game is so much faster. Like I just don't know how a guy like that really produces in an offense. And a lot of people compare him to Gibbs. I don't think he's like Gibbs at all. I think they run very differently. He definitely has like that receiving kind of like high floor. And if he goes to the Bears or the Broncos, just because those coaches, those are spots that I'd raise him up quite a bit. But I really see TreVeyon, I think, differently than a lot of people. Yeah. And I have Dylan Sampson above TreVeyon. I think I just like his style a lot more. I think he reminds me of Kyron, how he gets really small and fits through the windows. That first time I watched Kyron, I saw him just get through a little window and just has a nose for the end zone. And I immediately went and traded for him in our league. I was like, I'm getting this guy.
No, Sampson and Devin Neal are the 2 next running backs after that group of 5 for me. So right there with you. TreVeyon, like I said, TreVeyon I think is going to be, I don't think he needs to be your huge workhorse down in, down out. But in how Gibbs can rack up the points very quickly, I think Henderson has the same, potential range of outcomes for how Gibbs scores his fantasy points and how TreVeyon scores his fantasy points. As far as, again, you have to, the right coach and scheming him in the correct way and getting the ball in his hands in space and those other things. And he's also a phenomenal pass protector. Like that's, so that's going to be huge in, that's a very learned trait. It's a very want to kind of situation, but he's already really good at it. Judkins is kind of like, would seem like the better pass protector not, it's kind of 50-50. Dylan Sampson's 50-50. Like it's there. It could be good. There's just times where it's just not.
RJ Harvey is 0-100.
For sure. He's there. They didn't really ask him to pass protect all that much. I'm because of the upside and the home run hitter that TreVeyon kind of could be is what I think is tantalizing for a lot of people. So I think that's probably what people do. And, it could be a very good call on your, part to have him maybe a little lower, but I think wheels up if he goes. Oh, and I mean, Vegas, the Raiders, he'd be back with Chip Kelly, right? Yeah. So that, him going to Cleveland wouldn't be my favorite, right? I'd rather see Judkins or Hampton go to Cleveland. I'd rather see Caleb Johnson go to Cleveland. I'd rather see RJ Harvey or Devin Neal go to Cleveland, right?
Damian Martinez,
sure. That's, probably more like a 4th or a 5th round running back, but he could get juiced up depending on where he goes. Like he'd be like somebody like Cincinnati drafts him in the 5th round to kind of go along with Chase Brown, right? That would be something that I would like to see. So, yeah.
Okay, could we ask you a few questions about our league, like specifically and issues we have had?
Sure.
Because I'm sure that stuff like this happens in other leagues as well. The biggest issue we have right now is that one of the guys that we had was horrible at making trades. His team is awful. He left. And then we had somebody else come and fill in, but it's almost like an expansion team right now. Like I wouldn't even roster most of the guys that he has starting. So what are some good ways to mediate
rosters.
that?
We have 26. So it's 14-team league. This is our original
you're 14.
league.
You're already.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This one. So go to scroll up. No. That's Tuffy's team.
Get Booted Serafino.
Yeah, it's Get Booted Serafino. Okay. So basically with this league, since it's all of our friends from college, when we started the league, because of how our group chat is just always kind of popping, and like we keep in touch with the guys in our fantasy league way more than anyone else. We pretty much don't keep in touch with anyone else from college. It's just terrible, but like it's a
very bad team.
This team is awful. Because of the situation with this league, we started essentially with a waiting list of other guys that wanted to get into the league. So the first guy that dropped out, like 2 years in, we immediately had a guy come in, pick up the team, trade away Cooper Kupp, trade away some other assets, and he's on the rise for sure. This team is in a way worse position. It has 0 assets. It did have 1 asset that he traded.
Picks either.
Yeah, I think he traded Jordan Love for a first, so he does have a first this year. But essentially,
can he go down?
The roster's devoid of talent.
He's got all 26 first.
So he accumulated picks.
Go back up to the bench.
So like I have his first this year. I also had his first next year, but I traded it for Saquon to a guy that needed to rebuild.
Yeah, Will.
So we basically, Nick, do you want to go through some of the options that our league came up with to try to like stimulate this?
So we've talked about just giving him like the 15th pick. So like it'd be the 1.15.
The first thing I was going to say. Yeah.
Okay. So that's one option. I don't know how much that would help him just because of how bad his team is. One other idea I had was like based on like each team's KTC value, making them like donate a player of a certain value to him. So like the better teams would have to donate like a better player pick.
Right.
I'm against that as the top team in the league.
They'll do like a dispersal draft in some leagues, especially if like 2 or 3 people leave, where like you kind of protect some players, and then like there'll be 2 or 3 teams or 2 or 3 players off teams that kind of can get on these other guys' teams, and then they kind of draft those teams that are in there.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, like those are the 2 main ideas.
I've never really done the dispersal before, so there's probably a better guideline out there to exactly what that is. But
yeah, one of the ideas that was gaining steam in our group chat is you take a point value off keep trade cut. So say it's 6,000 on like the trade calculator, and every team has to give like a combination of 1 or 2 assets, whether that's players or draft picks, that equals that point value, or like a range of like 5,600 to 6,000. And that way he accumulates a combination of draft picks, depth players, and starters. And everyone just has to give 1 or 2 assets equaling that point, not 4, so that you're not giving away 4 wide receiver 4s. But
does this guy know what he's doing?
The new guy?
Yes.
I mean, like enough where he's not. Yeah.
Let's say the first thing you should do, which I don't like them, but in this situation, to safeguard things, is buy him a calculator and let him use it, just so that he's not getting beat in trades. That's the first thing. I'm not a trade calculator guy, But what it is can be good for is those, like if somebody doesn't know, there's not just somebody who's going to continually just absolutely take advantage of that play. You know what I mean?
Which is what happened.
Right. I'm saying that's probably how you got here, so I didn't know if this guy knew.
Everyone was just sending the dude that owned this team trades, and it was just terrible.
Every year, like the new draft picks came out, everybody texted and tried to get first.
I think number one, I don't know how much the buy-in is or whatever. I'd give him at least 2 years free where he doesn't have to pay.
Okay, we did do that.
We gave him his first year free.
Only one?
No, I think
we'll probably do the second year as well.
Yeah. You need to figure out some way to get at least some assets on this team. And this is to be like, it's going to take 3 years to try to cycle this through.
Yeah. If for the people that aren't watching, that are only listening, his starting lineup is Jared Goff, which is good. And then it's AJ Dillon, Kenneth Gainwell, Kayshon Boutte, Elijah Moore, Tyler Conklin, Westbrook Akine, Tim Patrick, and then kicker defense. So it's bad. Like these are not.
He is a wide receiver and a quarterback.
The worst thing about this team is that he doesn't have his first next year. Mm-hmm. So that's like ultimately like, because he's not even going to get rewarded for just stinking this year and getting the 101, whether he makes it or trade. I mean, at that point, he should definitely trade it and get 3 or 4 assets. And that's really how you're going to reset this thing, is like he's going to need the 101 for 2 years in a row. And like, he doesn't need to make like that 108. He probably shouldn't make that pick.
Yeah, I agree.
He should trade that down,
especially with the depth in this class.
Yeah, you need to somehow fill out some. There's a whole bunch of different ways to skin a cat, right? Like people play stars and scrubs. People play with a lot of depth, depending on how you like to run a team. But what I don't have have a great answer for exactly how to fix this right away. But he should. That 26 first is a huge bummer. He at least has his 26 second. And then 27, he's got his first. And so he's got all his picks there. So you guys only have 3 rounds?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's just such a deep, with 14 teams,
you should give him the 115. And everybody should be okay with that.
I think 115, 116, we talked about giving him 2
I also
picks
have the 2.1.
Yeah,
so
I know.
His second rounder. That's like, so they were talking originally about giving this guy like
that's 26 seconds.
Yeah, they were talking about giving this guy the 101 for the next couple years and just shifting everyone down. But I had his 25 and 26 first. And I was like, no. So to insulate myself from that, I traded away the 26 first just in case the league revolted against me.
You should do some more. Again, I'm not an expert in the dispersal, but you could look up, kind of read about some of how different people do it. And maybe they're, like you were saying, the value of keep, trade, cut or whatever, however you want to do that. Like there may be a way, like nobody has to give them great players, but like if you could just get some like bench players on his team that could help him do, and that's a tough ask really at the end of the day. Is like, I built this team. I don't want to give you anything. So I don't really love that. But if it's for the betterment of the league, I guess you could try to figure that out. Or, I mean, to me, this would be like the most fun. I'm like, I got this terrible team.
Yeah.
How am I gonna rebuild this thing? And just knowing that it's going to be 3 years, right? That's kind of what you're signing up for. But again, we led the episode off with it. For this guy, unfortunately, again, to harp on it, he doesn't have his first in 26, which is terrible. But it's patience, and you got to stay as active as possible. And what's really going to help is like microtransactions. It's just getting those tacked on pieces to like last year. Chase Brown was somebody in every trade. If they had somebody like a Chase Brown, I'm trying to get Chase Brown thrown in. He's a later pick who didn't really do anything. I call them escalators. Like they're players who I think can really elevate in value if they get a shot, right? Like Keaton Mitchell was somebody last year because he was hurt.
I've got him on all my teams.
Trade that if I'm trading with the guy who has Keaton Mitchell, I'm trying to get Keaton Mitchell for free. Maybe it works out to be nothing, but like you have to identify those players who you can just try to be tacking on. And a lot of the times it's a lot of back and forth of trades, and every partner is not going to be as, committed to like some people just shut that down. Like they're just like, I don't want to do this back and forth. To me, the back and forth is how you can gain like where the holes in their differences of values are. And so like, I need to figure out, this is me gathering information. I don't want the first, that first offer gets accepted, that was probably a poor process. Like somebody was like, oh, I got to take that right away, you know? And then you're always like, damn, I could have got more. Right. So that's always a bummer when you see that kind of go through. So like for him, that 108 is, I don't know how active this league is. If it's like, if there's periods of activity,
it's constant.
Okay.
Constant activity.
But then you should be good. Like he should be seeing like how far back can he trade that 108 to get a first next year? That's the first thing that I'd be like, can I go back to 208 and get get a first? Is that from whoever that player is, or, whatever, how far back can I go with that and still make a pick and get a first round pick for next year? Right. So I'm gathering more assets and I'm kicking cans down the road.
Yeah, he might be able, especially during like for Wyatt.
That'd be on the clock movement for me.
It's a great opportunity for Wyatt here is like we have a couple guys being from Dayton. We have a couple guys in our league that are big Ohio State fans. So if Judkins, Egbuka, or TreVeyon are still on the clock at 108, text one of the Ohio State guys. Ask them if they want the pick so they can grab their Ohio State guy and then trade back to beginning of the second round and pick up a 26 first. Like I'm sure you could get that deal done.
Right. And you don't have to trade all the way back to get, you can do smaller trade backs and be gaining players or seconds and thirds in this draft and next. And then, if you can accumulate some more, maybe you take the 312 and the 304 and you move back up into the 2 to 2, whatever you think you could do. Maybe it's 212, maybe it's, however you're trying to do it. You're just trying to like micro transaction your way into better assets or more stuff down the line.
Yeah. And we do 24-hour drafts. So each pick, we have 24 hours to make a pick. So much time to trade. And we know each other. So we're in a group chat. So like last year I had 104. My fourth ranked player last year was Ladd. I was super high on Ladd. And he was ranked consensus down around like 108 to 111 kind of range. So I was like, all right, I could grab Brock Bowers here, but I took Pitts as a rookie and got burned by that. And I'm still convinced he's going to develop into something. So
he's
I don't
still
need
younger
Bowers.
than half the tight ends in the league that are coming in.
Also, his touchdown totals were 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. So 5 this year. We're gaining traction. But so I traded the pick to Nick for 107 or 108 and grabbed Ladd there and picked up value with it.
Right. You brought up a good point there of knowing that area, who likes who likes what, who has the weakness. It's all knowing your league and your league mates all in the psychology of how they work. And they're Ohio State guys. Mm-hmm. You can extract extra value because of that. Right. And there's a lot of good Ohio State players in this draft. Maybe they still like Justin Fields. He doesn't have Justin Fields, but like if you had maybe he could be the guy you trade Justin Fields to, or, so knowing your league and knowing the people as I was talking about, like trade partners, like, I know who the trade partners are in every league that I'm in that I know I can go have a discussion with, and it'll be good back and forth, and it won't be like I send one thing, they send one thing back, and then that's it. There is no negotiation. There's no nothing. They're not going to move off of any sort of, and it's like, I don't want it. Like, unless I can find that right combination, I don't want to deal with that person. I'm going to go over here and deal with that person.
Just send the Tropic Thunder meme. We do not negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah. Right.
One of the guys he's actually in both of our leagues. He wanted us to ask you this question. He's one of the big Ohio State fans. He's trying to build an all Ohio State roster. He wants to know how feasible this is. He did just trade for Garrett Wilson in one of the leagues. And he obviously would trade his soul for Jeremiah Smith in 2027 with the 101. But he's trying to figure out a way to get TreVeyon and Judkins. I have 2 earlier first-round picks in that league. He tried to get them both from me in exchange for Drake London and a 26 first because I have Penix and could stack him in London. But I've already got so many receivers in that league that I'm really not interested. But how feasible do you think it is for someone? I mean, college versus NFL is different because through all the redraft I played growing up, I was always trying to build all Packers teams. It's fun to have the players you root for on a weekly basis. But I guess on the NFL side, and then if your favorite team is a college team, like how feasible do you think that kind of is? And would you just say, don't try it, it's not worth it, even though you think it'll be fun to have your players you like?
I think it's plenty feasible. To me, that just comes down to how much money do you want to give away most years. And Ohio State's at least one that it's more feasible than not, right? Quarterback would be the position that you might struggle with. Ohio State hasn't really produced.
He's high on Will Howard.
I mean, sure. Or Kyle McCord, as an OG. I think actually kind of like Kyle McCord. I mean, you could get JSN, Garrett Wilson. Who's just some running backs that have been.
You got Judkins and Henderson right now.
Henderson this year.
Dobbins.
Tight end wise, not much.
Yeah.
So I think if you like that and that's part of how you having fun, I think you should get as many as makes sense. But I don't think that should be what you're trying to do unless you're just trying to have some fun and don't really care necessarily about the end game. Yeah. So. But that's again, knowing your league and knowing what that guy, that's a mark to me of like every time there's an Ohio State guy, I'm coming after him. So
we talked a lot about some of the upcoming rookie running backs. Moving over to the wide receiver side of things, I guess if we could just start off, who are some of the wide receivers that you have kind of above consensus ranked compared to other people?
Probably Luther Burden, although he's gaining steam again. He's my wide receiver too. I'd say Golden probably further back than consensus. Okay. Not that I dislike him. I don't understand how we got all the way to he's the number one wide receiver.
It's the 40 time.
yeah, right. Let's see. Some of the back end guys. I like Royals a lot. He's like those. So how Burden and Royals play are kind of my kryptonites on players. I like those yak guys that with the ball in their hands, they're really special. You mentioned Knoll and Higgins. I think the fantasy community right now is what I'm seeing is lower on Higgins. Still good value on Jaden Higgins from Iowa State there. I think that's about to change because I do think he's going to get first round or high second round capital.
I think so too.
Yeah. That'll move the needle a good bit. I'm trying to think of some. I think Kyle Williams is somebody who's coming on strong right now at the right time. And then I like Jack Besh. I think I probably have him higher than consensus, and I think he's going to be kind of coming up there. I'm drawing a blank on all the rankings in front of me.
It's
these
hard
guys.
when you don't.
Trying to think of. There's somebody else that I.
So really where do you have Ibuka if you got Burden at 2?
He's probably 3 or 4.
Okay. This is not including Travis Hunter?
No.
I guess we could have the Travis Hunter discussion right now. What do you do with Travis Hunter? Because I was doing some underdog drafts back in February, and he was down at like 100 plus in the ADP, and then I did an underdog draft like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he was up at like 40. I was like, whoa, something changed here. I think the Browns and some other teams were saying they view him more as a wide receiver.
Right.
Like, can we even know anything, or is it going to be once the season starts, we're just either you made the right bet or the wrong bet?
So it's all about. Any player is like this for me. I don't really dislike very many players. It's all just about the value and what I can stomach and what I like and where I have them in comparison to other people. So with Hunter, if he chooses to be a wide receiver, then I think you're probably looking at wide receiver 1 or 2 in the class. I don't think that that's what's going to happen. The problem is yes, if Cleveland drafts him and they say he's going to play wide receiver, the thing is like, I don't think anybody's really knows the answer or has talked to Travis Hunter and say, do you want to play full-time wide receiver? And I think the answer is no. I think he just said that if somebody wants him to just play one side of the ball, he'd rather quit. That being said, to me, that says you can't really moonlight as a wide receiver or as a corner, rather, right? It's the second most communicative position on the field. You have to be in those defensive back meetings. You have to be in that secondary meeting. You have to know what the assign. If you're going to come in there and just play man every once in a while, that's fine. But that's not what's going on in a lot of cases. And if he goes to Cleveland, maybe it is a little bit more like you do play receiver. They've got some okay corners, like the Giants, I think make more sense for him, or the Patriots maybe make more sense for him. If I'm any of those teams, I think he's a blue chip prospect, but it's just such a weird game and gamble to be playing. I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to play that game because I think primarily whichever one he decides to commit to, and he needs to commit to one, you can't be awesome at both, like at this next level, right? You can do that in college, but on this next level, there's so much more going into this, right? So he needs to commit to the defensive side, I think, and then moonlight as a wide receiver, get sub packages, do those other things. So for me, and the way I'm logicking this whole situation, he's like a mid-second as far as the fantasy draft. I'm talking Superflex tight end premium. So that bumps up a couple the Colston Lovelands and the Warrens and has quarterbacks in the first round, right? So that's probably putting him at like 204, 205 or something like that. It's just a tricky position, the Travis Hunters. I'm kind of out until I have more information, and I don't even rank them right now in my rankings because I'm like, it's not complete. I don't know what to do with them. I can't tell you what to do with him. I think he's an excellent player. I think he could be a phenomenal wide receiver if that's what he wants to do. But I don't think that's what he wants to do. I think he wants to play both sides of the ball. And look, if he was built like DK Metcalf and did this, maybe I could say, sure, I could see him playing all the snaps, both sides, and just being a dog. He's 180 pounds. Like, it's just
victim weight,
right? and so like, the abuse and like, listen, I talked about it a little bit earlier. Like, how much do you want it? And he wants it. He loves it. He loves everything about this. He already puts a ton of time into treatment and getting his body right. And all he does is watch film and doesn't party, yada yada. All great things, but I don't care how much treatment you have. Like, number one, people are going to be looking for you out there because you are this unicorn or whatever. And it's just like, we were just talking about it on one of the shows. I think it's coming out Monday. You go and it's not college. Like, you go and you're going to play, Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. And then on the other side, you're going to have Quinshawn and Cooper DeJean guard. Like, those are four ridiculously high level players. And then let's say you end up on the Giants team, like, you're going to then have to face CD. And then on the other side, there's good corners over there. On the other side, you're going to have to go guard Terry McLaurin, Debo, whoever else. And then, on the flips, you know what I mean? So there's just like, it's just like you end up in Cleveland. That's the black and blue division. Like, those dudes those games are just thumpers. So like, playing both sides every snap realistically is not realistic to me. So I could have a 30-minute conversation about Travis Hunter.
But it sounds like, I guess, the main conclusion of that is second round, depending on how risk adverse you are, pretty much.
Right. And hey, if you're the champion and you've got a good roster and you want to say 112, I'm going to plant my flag here, I have no problem with that. The dude who just had 108, do not take him. Your team sucks.
Don't take him.
Don't do that. Like, you can't afford to take the risk. And he's awesome. And like, the people go way overboard and they're like, oh, he's Justin Jefferson if he wants to play. Let's pump the brakes on that. Like, his body control and the way he moves could be like a Justin Jefferson. And that's what's so tantalizing from the wide receiver perspective. Like, there's some catches out there where he's defying gravity and half of his body's here, half of his body's
body
there.
Body control is insane.
It's absolutely insane. So I don't think he wants to play full-time receiver and then not play any D-back. I just don't see, to play both sides, it has to be sub-package receiver, full-time corner.
Yeah. So that's the only way to really do it, unless he is doing both 100%. But you can't. I mean, every team in the league is now playing at least 50% of their snaps zone on defense. So like, you can't really just moonlight with man coverage. I just don't think it makes sense.
Right.
But with wide receivers, when you're going through and you're ranking your wide receivers, you said you really like the yards after the catch type of wide receiver.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite different, I guess, categories when you're looking at tape? What are some of your favorite things that you look for? Because I mean, for running backs, you really value the receiving ability. I really like the thumpers. If you look at my fantasy team, it's built with Saquon and Jonathan Taylor and Kyron, not the biggest receiving backs, but just 3 down backs is like kind of what I like, even though they do need baseline receptions to really have a shot at being top 12 running backs. There's those stats out there. But when it comes to watching wide receiver tape, yards after the catch ability, body control, route. Like for me, it's really like route running and release are two of the most important things. And that's why I have guys like Higgins ranked higher than Burden.
Yeah.
But like, what are some of the things that you like the most?
I think release certainly is important. I think one thing that I think gets blown out of proportion a lot of the times, and probably one of the biggest things that I'm not gonna say I don't care about, because of course you should care about it, but like the jamming kind of stuff that people will cite on like, oh, he can't get it. Like in the NFL, like if you have the right scheme, they're going to move him around and they're not going to allow him to have that many plays where he's getting jammed. Like if you're the bona fide, like Trey Harris has to be able to get off of a jam, right? Yeah. Xavier Worthy doesn't need to get off a jam. You're messing it up if you're using him in a situation where you're putting him in there where he has to fight through all that. Like Xavier Worthy's so much fun, but like that's on the coach to scheme that. And that's the same way, like route running is like Ibuka to me establishes that, because he is such a savant in that category, that I know there's just a really safe floor there. The floor is great. Why I like Luther Burden over him is because the ceiling is like unlimited, right? And that's the different, that's kind of what puts him over for me. Mm-hmm. Some people are like, Ibuka is just a bona fide wide receiver. I don't think he's a one. So that kind of detracts from saying, you know, he could be the number one receiver in the class. I think he's an excellent two. Like Jordan Addison I talked about that the whole time coming out. I'm not comparing their play styles. I'm just saying like, he's not a Batman. He's a Robin. Mm-hmm. And Ibuka seems like a Robin to me. Luther Burden, I think, can fit somewhere in between. Again, it's going to have to be scheme dependent. Like if Luther Burden goes to one of these Shanahan style offenses, then the sky's the limit, right? You're messing it up if you put Luther Burden in a situation where you're going to line him up out wide and make him do all the traditional wide receiver things. Like I don't care that like DK Metcalf wasn't a great route running receiver. Brian Thomas ran 2 routes in college. Yeah. Like a drag and a go.
I was low on him. Right. Because I put that super high up. Right. So I had Brian Thomas Jr. That was one of my misses.
Right.
Like I had him pretty low, like beginning of second round.
But that's probably also why you like Ladd, right? Because the release and the packages and the stems and the top of the route, it's all super quick. I think as longer and longer I've been doing this, I care less and less about very specific things and more just like the overall body. Like Brian Thomas was right in the tier for me last year with Worthy, Ladd, and Brian Thomas. That was like the outside of Neighbors, Rome, and Marv. Those are the next 3. And so grouping them together and kind of tiering them up, they all operate differently. But I would say I was probably lower on Brian Thomas than maybe those other 2 because I like kind of how they want a little more. And there was a little less definition of how he was going to transition into the, like Ibuka, you know exactly how he's going to transition into the next part of the league. Brian Thomas was like, he's big, he's fast, he's physical. But again, as long like DK Metcalf would have been the first one where people were like, you got to take N'Keal Harry over him because he could do other things. And I'm like, I don't care what DK Metcalf does or doesn't do. He's 6'4", he's built like an Adon. Like you're messing it up if you're not putting. Also, you're going in the next level. It's their job to develop him into what they want to do in the role that they want to have him in. So like Brian Thomas certainly didn't miss on him. I didn't have him above Rome Odunze or anything. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I had him way up. Like I liked him in this spot, but that was like, he ran a drag and he went deep and he was very good at that. And so like in this first year, you could have thought it might be a little slow for Brian Thomas because he could do these couple of things, but it all broke well for Brian Thomas. Everybody got hurt. The backup quarterback came in and then Mac Jones is throwing it to him 12 times a game, right? And so that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of what you want. So I think we got away from the initial question there, but that's kind of how I view it. I'm looking overall at how he moves, how he wins, what's relatable, athleticism. Sometimes I think like Matt Waldman is, I don't know if you guys know who that is. Excellent evaluator. We've had him on the show. He is a film guy, but very analytical in how he approaches film, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I think fantasy-wise, like he's looking at it, I think from more of an NFL perspective. Fantasy-wise, I think sometimes you can get too caught up in some nuance of some things and start detracting. Whether to me, it's a little more binary than that. It's like, can you play or can't you play? And then inside of those things, we're going to kind of rank how your different traits can translate into situations and then landing spot and all those other things. And of course, analytics come into play and you can start edging some guys out, or really the big thing is once you bring analytics into things, it's a part of the picture. You shouldn't be solely based. You mentioned yards per route run. There's a lot of correlation to yards per route run, which is why people like it. Yeah. But really what we're coming to figure out is those individual stats like that. What you want to be doing is combining stats and making your own sort of like, these are efficiency metrics, these are production metrics. And when you start combining them, you get the higher correlations of what's going to work. And that's kind of the step that I think everybody's a little behind. I'm not saying we're there because we're just kind of branching out into this, but like the sole singular stats maybe aren't quite as important as they've been made out to be.
Yeah. Speaking of like binary, can they play, can't they play? Are there any things you look at for tape for running backs or wide receivers? Obviously, quarterback is a lot harder to evaluate.
I don't even watch tape on I'll watch the game. Because for quarterbacks, I just want to see how they manage a game, how they play a game. The NFL can't figure out what mechanics matter and what don't. So who am I?
Hit rate in the first round. Like,
exactly.
But for running backs and wide receivers, are there any things that you look at where it's like, do not draft? For example, Quentin Johnson, he was like 103, 104 consensus. He was like the number one wide receiver in that class. I had him as do not draft. Wasn't even on my board because when I watched his tape, he was catching with his body all the time. And I was like, this guy is going to be the biggest bust ever. Do not draft him. And then, of course, like one of the guys that was really good in our league, he took a step back because he wasted an early first-round pick he traded for on QJ. And like, so are there any things you look for where it's just an immediate turnoff?
I would say I don't ever put anybody on the do not draft list. What it does is then it drops them down. Things like Quentin Johnson was back into the first guy when the rankings finished for us, right? You had, that would have been Zay Flowers. JSN was in that class, maybe?
Yes. Yeah.
So and there might have been one more.
I think that was a pretty weak wide receiver class.
So those guys were ahead of him. The body catching, getting it in on you is certainly something that would detract. Also something that could be fixed. Mm-hmm. Like if you can, it's not like you can coach that into somebody. I think you saw some growth from Quentin this year.
A little bit, yeah.
The big thing was like how he wins and how he separates is not great. He's a big receiver who doesn't necessarily play like a big receiver.
Was he Texas?
TCU.
Okay.
So yeah, there's certainly some flags of like how they like George Pickens. I like George Pickens. And people were worried about the separation, but like, because he's so spectacular in the contested situation, I don't really care about the separation quite as much as I do with somebody like Quentin Johnson, who's not great in that particular realm. Right. So I just start weighing those kind of things in those buckets almost of like, all right, well, body catcher doesn't separate, doesn't win necessarily maybe how his body type should win. It doesn't really do anything that stands out like, oh my God, outside of he's big and fast, right? And so that equates for something, and it could be down the line, something that turns in, but we're going to weight that down the line. So I don't go do not draft, but that just starts working into tiers of saying, he's dropping a tier, he's dropping a tier, he's dropping a tier.
I know just from listening to your podcast that you and I do have some players, because we've kind of on the rookie side of things today, we've had some differences, I'd say, in our rankings, but from like past years, we've had guys that we're both very high on that we accumulated a lot of shares of, like Penix, Tillman. You mentioned Keaton Mitchell earlier. I've been a big fan of his, even though he hasn't really been on the field much. But like Tillman and Penix especially, we're both high on. So would you like to talk about just some of your favorite players that you just have a massive amount of shares of? And are there any drawbacks to getting the same guys in all of your leagues?
Over time, I will try to not have, especially like the higher end ones in the rookie draft. I will try to we can go back to like Jonathan Taylor and CEH, right? So the landing spot with CEH was really good. Jonathan Taylor was clearly the best running back in that class. Yeah. In that situation, I probably didn't have nearly as much CEH. I just stuck with Jonathan Taylor for the most part.
Good on
right?
you then.
But I still had some CEH, right? Yeah. I didn't want to completely miss. So that might have been like an 80-20 split, right? But I try, it's typically those mid to later round guys that I end up having a lot. Like Tillman is a good example of like Tillman's on as many rosters as I could possibly have him on. And even if he wasn't initially on that roster, like I talked about in the trades, like every trade I sent out for the last 2 years, Nico Collins was another one of those guys that like, and that's kind of the trajectory I could see Tillman being on if he could get some quarterback.
Yeah, when I watched his tape when he was coming out, I was like, how is this guy not a round one pick in fantasy? Like, just absolutely loved him. But yeah, like what you're saying, that you called them escalators earlier, just trying to get those little add-ins. People if there's someone on someone's bench that you can get them to throw in. That's what I did with the Joe Mixon, Garrett Wilson trade. He wanted Joe Mixon in the 105 for Garrett Wilson. I forced him to give me Jordan Mason because, Aaron Jones is often injured. Heck of a running back, but if he's injured, Jordan Mason's going to get that time, and he performed well last year. So I figure, at least if I'm losing Joe Mixon and the running back, I would take with that 105. I'll probably get to play Jordan Mason towards the end of the year, maybe in the playoffs.
You're going to let a Viking help you win a league, huh?
Unfortunately, you got to do what you got to do. I got St. Brown on my roster. Yeah. Picked him as a rookie because I knew Equinemius St. Brown. I was familiar with the whole family. I was like, oh, this guy's going to be great. So, but yeah, I guess you mentioned Nico Collins. Nick, you wanna jump in with your Puka and Nico successes?
Yeah. So I have both Nico and Puka. I got them both off of waivers because Puka, he probably would have gone like the 4th round, but he wasn't drafted our first year. And then Nico, someone dropped him after our initial draft. And I don't know. I just he's like the first guy on the Texans and just doesn't have a quarterback, so he's going to suck. So I just picked him up. But yeah, so nice. My 2 best guys, I got off waivers.
That's crazy. Again, luck is some of
Yeah,
dude. I obviously am really into Dynasty. I play it a lot. Like, I don't win every league every year. It's just not possible. There's just so much luck that goes into, you can put yourself in, like I said, the best positions to have values and all these other things. But like to be able to actually win this year, like, you said, I don't know, maybe it was this. Yeah, it was this team.
Yeah.
Brees, was good for a section and then got not so great down the stretch. Like, Nico was hurt for a chunk of time. Hurts on your run at the end of the season was banged up. So it's just like, you got a good team. You can compete with just about anybody, but it's just like, it's just not, there's nothing you can do about it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's just the breaks, and fantasy's a fickle beast. So it's,
because we were doing 8 teams in the playoffs to start, but like too many like top teams just got screwed in like the first round by just having a down game. So we're doing 6 now where the top 2 get a bye.
Sure,
but
I like the last team in the playoffs is the most total points. Like so that way
5 and then most, because we actually have had that. That was my team that won the championship. I was the 6th seed. I almost didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
And I just like 2nd in points for it. We had multiple times where the points for winner has gotten screwed in the first round.
Some people will do it that way. Max points for.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll do draft pick decisions in that way as well, instead of like tanking or whatever. It's most max points for.
We've had that discussion
like multiple times.
Yeah,
because we had an issue with tanking this last year where guys were just benching their whole team pretty much. Which I've always been a fan of max points for at least like the bottom part of the draft, because we do,
it can make sense,
like the NFL style for like the championship league. But I'm still trying to get them to do max points for the rookie draft. But it just hasn't happened.
I earned my 101 this year in our league.
Something we did come up with for points for, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this or if you do it in any of your leagues, but we started going through if someone either, so like say someone has a guy that's injured and is like known ahead of the game to be out and they start him, or if they have a guy on bye that they start that can't score points. So basically if they play someone that can't score points for the week, or if they have like an empty starting spot, we fine them $5 for that week. And then that $5 pot with all the fines throughout the year goes to the points for winner. Have you ever heard of that before?
I have not, but I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. A lot of the times we'll just sub those, make the commissioner will just go in and sub those guys out.
Okay. Yeah, we don't do that.
Yeah, no, I don't mind that. Hey, if you wanna start somebody, you should. I'm like, hey, I'm with you. Ethically, I think you should just at least put together a starting lineup.
Yeah, so part of that is it makes people more likely to check their lineup right beforehand because they could get fined. And then part of it is also, hey, if you had a super team and you just got screwed one week in the playoffs because a couple of your guys laid goose eggs, but you had this killer team, at least you get something back.
Right. What I've switched to in a lot of leagues for the winner bracket side is the last 2 weeks are round robin total points for 2 weeks. So you don't get eliminated if you have one bad week. You have another week to kind of try to, so like there'll be 4 teams in and they're all playing. Everyone's still alive through 2 weeks because then you just add up max points scored and that's determines first, second, and third. Just takes a little bit more luck out of it. Obviously, you could just have somebody who goes off and then whatever, but you don't get eliminated and all 4 teams are still available in 16 or 17 or whatever.
I like that idea. I think we should probably talk about doing that because we do like a rules meeting every year where we like tweak some like minor things. One thing that always comes up is the trade deadline. Like the number 2 guy right there, he has his thing deadlines because he hates a trade deadline. So
I'm with him.
Yeah.
I think redraft for sure. Set it up.
Yeah.
Firm. Dynasty, no way.
What? Not even the playoffs?
I don't like it
in the playoffs,
Dynasty.
I'm fine with it. I can understand it in the playoffs. A lot of the times we'll just say if we can't agree on terms, playoff teams can trade with playoff teams.
Okay.
If you're eliminated, you can't trade.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say no deadline. Like I play a lot and I've been in a lot of leagues. Like it does encourage a lot of trading and it almost never works out for the team that trades, but it's also good for the bottom half of the league to be able to trade in that situation. And it helps the league dynamic shift a little bit because people will get desperate. They'll see a trade go down. They're like, oh, well, I got to trade now. And so like all of a sudden there'll be a cascading effect of trades and it almost never actually helps the teams who are trading win.
That happened to me this year. So in our other league, where I have all the wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Puka, Neighbors, like stacked team, but my running backs are terrible. I was starting Kareem Hunt and Jalen Warren going into the playoffs. So I limped into the playoffs with the 6th seed. And I was like, right before the playoffs, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it. I need to at least give myself a shot. So I traded a first this year for David Montgomery, which is overpaying for David Montgomery, I would say. But there was a team that wasn't going to make the playoffs that wanted to get younger, so now they have an extra first this year.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think generally it's hard for people to wrap their head around and they say, no, that's ridiculous. Absolutely not. But I do think it's beneficial for the league to not have the deadline. As long as everybody's not as long as you don't have the guy who gave up that terrible team there who doesn't know what, if it's a good league where all the talent's spread out and everybody's, pretty ethical in how they go about their business. I think I was in your shoes, definitely not. And then I was just in something that I couldn't do anything about it. And I've come to the realization that I definitely am way more for no trade deadline at all. To just, if you're eliminated, I feel like it really helps the bottom teams be able to capture some extra value, especially for like older player, like Devontae Adams. Maybe you couldn't get it. They're like, you might only have 3 guys who are interested in trading in Devontae Adams for that back half run. Then you get in the playoffs, somebody has a trade go down and they're like, oh, I need some extra firepower. Yeah, I'll give you 2 seconds right now for Devontae Adams. And that just helps that bottom end team gain some more assets.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Can we hit Dynasty Strategy real quick, just as far as like contending versus rebuilding? It won't take too long, but
Show my rebuilding.
yeah. So this guy came in last, so he's about to get Janty, and he actually does have some really good young assets. He's just got a lot of holes.
Yeah. Just
This is your team?
yeah. So Mahomes, I took with the 102, which is now not seeming very great. But then
In the startup?
Yeah, this is last year's.
So we started up last year.
Is it
It's a super
Superflex?
flex. It's a super
Okay,
flex.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So only one QB really, which is Mahomes, and then I had Bucky Irving as my only running back last season.
Though.
Nothing else. Then Brian Thomas, Garrett Wilson, Brock Bowers, Tank Dell, and that's pretty much it.
I would almost say he's got to trade some of these young wide receivers.
What's the bench look like? What's the bench look like?
Bench is pretty shallow, so
All right, you got
really
Wright.
shallow.
Wright's all right.
yeah. So I got Wright,
Wicks, Johnson. Those
Austin, Wicks.
I like Theo Johnson. I like Wicks. What's down on that taxi? Jaheim Belt,
And
McMillan. There you go.
McMillan as well.
Unfortunately, you lost a little value on McMillan with Godwin coming back, but still solid asset.
Yeah. So I do have some pieces on the bench that.
Oh, go to your draft picks because I did give you a couple seconds.
Yeah. So I have,
You got Genty to add, like you said.
and I have 2 firsts next year, 2 seconds
Nice.
next year.
All right. I mean,
He's got all of my picks in
No,
the
he
next
does.
3 years.
you're not in bad shape. I mean, you got some high end players there. Brian Thomas and Drake London and Bowers. That's a solid core. And Mahomes, I think, is going to bounce back. And they've been so, they've been trying. And this year they went and just happened to get injured through pretty much all their receivers. So with Rice, Worthy coming on and Hollywood coming back, I think we see this Chiefs offense kind of bounce back to a little bit more splashy of an offense than we've seen over the past few years. Benson's a good asset to have. Bucky would be the first thing that I go, hey, can I capitalize on the huge upswing in value here? I'm probably keeping Brian Thomas and Drake London and Brock Bowers. You got the one-on-one, so you're going to add Genty. Unfortunately, Tank Dell's leg fell off.
He's got Tank Dell and Christian Watson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you had some other players down there, and you got some picks. I don't think you need to do anything terribly drastic. I think you just hold on for a second and see where the chips lay after this draft.
So I do agree with the upswing of the Chiefs offense, but
Don't trade Mahomes right now.
I sort of want to trade Mahomes.
Just wait a minute.
and
You gotta wait.
Split him in two.
I think the tear down is that was like popped in, but like you don't want to trade Mahomes right now because
Okay.
unless
Well, yeah, that
unless
too,
somebody's
'cause his
going to give you
value
unless
sucks.
somebody's going to give you the value that where I think he should be, maybe in between where you picked him and where he is now. If there was a middle ground there, I think you could tear down. But like
For a team like his that's in Superflex, but his only quarterbacks are Mahomes, Levis, and Rattler. So he basically has one quarterback.
what other picks did you have this year?
So I have the 101 and the 201. I
201,
just have
okay.
only my picks.
Is this 14 or 12?
This is 12.
Okay.
Does he, in this situation, do you try to trade a 2026 first for a Dak, or like, what do you recommend when you're in Superflex, but you really only have one quarterback like this?
You're not trying to win this year,
Yeah.
right?
No.
So I don't think you're urgently pursuing the quarterback yet. It's kind of like in, Dynasty in general, get the running back last. You can kind of find that second quarterback last. I play Superflex different. Like I don't obviously there's a lot of weight on the quarterback and I like that, but like I'm okay with having kind of two more middle quarterbacks. Like,
Oh yeah.
and eventually you'll need a third on the team, just which doesn't have to be anything crazy, but like it's hard to trade in Superflex without giving a quarterback and getting a quarterback back. But Bucky might be somebody that you could trade for a quarterback with a lot of value. I don't know who's holding quarterbacks and what the situation is. That's the other
There's
part that
some
comes into the
borders.
equations, right? How many teams have an excess of
I went zero quarterback and
Yeah.
found myself with like 5 quarterbacks.
Right.
So
This league is also kind of tough to trade in. I've talked with a couple. It's mostly Scotty, but I don't know. We're just so far apart on everything.
Yeah.
Like I have,
It's the first year of the
Lamar.
league, so trading in it is
Right.
Yeah.
a
It's also-
slow
yeah.
And if
start.
everybody isn't comfortable with Superflex, they don't really sometimes understand the value. Like when you get in leagues that people have only played 1 or 2 Superflex and not a while, like sometimes it takes a minute for everyone to figure out.
This is also a league where we just did the startup, but it was like a hodgepodge of essentially Jack's friend group, my friend group from our other Dynasty league that wanted a second league, and then like our family league back home. And for a lot of those people, like probably 6 or 7, it's their first ever Dynasty league and obviously their first ever Superflex league. So there is some hesitancy to trading.
Yeah, those people should all have calculators.
Yeah. I think that hesitancy will decrease over time though, because once you start to see other people making trades and you see that the best teams are teams that trade, then you start to trade.
Can we look at my team quick? Because I'm also trying to rebuild, which I'm trying to trade Lamar.
I think quarterback targets real quick while you're pulling this up is Love and Stroud, both values down. Mahomes, who you already have, and then Dak, Trevor, and then Penix for me. If
I'm so high on Penix.
If the value's down on Penix, but like Love and Stroud are 3rd round startup picks right now, which is low for them. Dak is perennially slept on, but always a solid quarterback when he plays. And I think
Baker too.
Lawrence in the back half of, Lawrence was actually, if we go look at the points, Lawrence was actually pretty decent last year, just had a couple of stinkers and then got hurt. And now we're bringing in Cohen and a different offense. Like I really dislike the Jags' old head coach. One of the worst. So I like this upgrade to Cohen and I like what he could potentially do for Trevor as a quarterback. So he's definitely a buy for me right now. So those are just some devalued quarterbacks a little bit right now. Maybe Bucky could do something for you. What were you?
Oh, just like what to, I mean, like I feel like I need to trade
Lamar Jackson. I'm just kidding. I know you,
I mean, I don't know. I hate my team. I like Drake May. I like Tyrone Tracy. I want to keep both of them, but like I want to get like AJ Brown, Jerry Jeudy, Jackson, all those guys. But I mean, that's just. I mean, I think I have like the 4th pick
on the
this
tail
year.
Like it.
Draft. He's just got normal draft capital.
Okay.
No excess.
There have been very few trades in this.
For me, Lamar's the league winner. Probably don't want to trade him.
Which I was talking with Scotty about it. He said he's not worth more than a first and like a late first. Yeah. So I was like, no kidding. Like, which he's also like I think he won this year, so he has a good team.
He won, and he is the worst person to trade with.
Yeah.
Worse than Ted.
Yeah.
Elite assets like that, like Lamar, is for me the general rule of thumb is like when you're the elite production 1st round startup pick kind of players, it's 3 firsts is like the general just baseline value, however you want to get there, whether it's actually 3 firsts or if it's players valued around firsts or whatever. That's typically at least the baseline for the trade of like, if you're getting rid of Lamar, now if you go from Lamar to Jalen Hurts, obviously you're not, that may be a tier down for something, but if you maybe you go from Lamar to Burrow and then pick up a good asset in between there. So you could kind of maybe tier down. I don't know what the settings are. If it's 4 or 6 point passing touchdown,
It's 4.
So Lamar's super valuable as far as, because the legs, with only 4 points per passing touchdown help offset some of that. Jeudy, you can't move right now because there's questions at the quarterback position. Although he does have okay value. AJ Brown, I'd be fine with sending offers out for that. You kind of got to figure out who wants him. If you probably can't trade Swift right now. He'd be a trade away target for me.
What do you think about him trying to get rid of Tyrone Tracy and DeAndre Swift in a bundle? Because I mean, like for those running backs that pop that were selected like 4th round or later, there's a lot of history of those guys not really keeping their jobs, even when they do pop. So
Tracy, I kind of feel similarly to Chase Brown right now, where the teams would be doing a disservice to themselves by drafting a high-end running back.
That's true.
That doesn't mean that they won't. Everyone's seen the clip of the Giants and the owner getting real bit out of shape and then it being wrong. So you could see the Giants and him basically demanding that we take another high-end running back. I think that would be the dumbest thing that either the Bengals or the Giants, you have so many more holes than to fill that. So like, I think that's silly. That being said, the Giants could easily draft a running back in the second round. I think Tracy's good. The Giants just stink. And I don't mind Swift either, but basically, if you can package them up and get a good value for it, it's just, again, this is all about volume sending. You figure out, we just talked about this the other day on maybe a Patreon episode, but like trading is very much like, once you go through and put in the time of, say, what you establish that I'd be fine getting back in those guys, now you can go to send the offer to like 3 or 4 different teams of saying, I've established that I'm comfortable getting back this amount or these type of players for this bundle. So now I've established what that is. Now I can go to the league and find which other teams. And it's usually 3 or 4 that can kind of fit that criteria of kind of what I'm doing. So to me, it's all about that first bundle of trade and that sweaty offer that goes out first and go, okay, yeah, I'm cool with that. If he'd accept right now, I'm great. Now I can go do that 3 or 4 more times.
I think also you can't be passive. You gotta be aggressive. So like being passive would be just putting a guy on the trading block or throwing out in the group chat like, hey, this guy's on the trade block. But being aggressive is like the guys were joking in the group chat the other day because they all got a trade offer from it. Like half the league got a trade offer. But basically what I did is I picked like 7-8 teams. I basically took the bottom 6 except for one team that I think is really on the rise because of some young assets, and then I took 2 of the teams that made the playoffs but are a lot older that I think are going to crumble because they don't have draft capital and they've just got older vets, and I sent all of those teams that I think have a possibility of having really early 27 firsts, like this, basically the same exact trade where I put like a guy and
it was Chubb and Hopkins, right?
I think it was like Chubb, Hopkins, and 25 second or something for a 27 first. And like, wasn't expecting anyone to bite, but sent it out to like 8 guys just in case. And like, just being aggressive that way where like you have to be offering trades to get the conversation started. You can't just like wait for people to want to trade with you.
Yeah, no, that's a good barometer of what kind of what I've been saying the whole time. It's just like you have to stay active. Like it's the only, like it's not the only way. You certainly can set it and forget it and be good at drafting and sucking value and here and there, but to being aggressively sending offers consistently.
Oh yeah, here's a okay. So like I sent like everyone this offer basically, but it was I'm sending the 25 107 and a 27 third for a 25 2 3 and 27 first. So if someone really likes a guy that's like in that mid first round this year, then like maybe they'll bite on it, and then I get an early potentially 27 first and have a shot at some really good prospects.
Yeah, we kind of talk.
We have 24-hour drafts in this league. I will not be accepting this. If I want that, I'll message you during your 7th pick.
Yeah.
I want it.
But that could be the kind of stuff that the dude whose team's real bad could be doing as well, like trying to move back, grab future first. So never a bad idea. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're like, what I like to do in those situations is maybe not even the worst teams in the league, but go find the teams who are good right now, but like their roster is Devontae Adams and maybe some older guys.
And they don't have a first this year.
Well, or just like they're feeling themselves right now and they're not worried about 27. So that first is they're willy-nilly to get rid of that first because they're they think that they're so good and confident in their team. But if we cycle this through another year and then get to that second year, all of a sudden their team where it was, and obviously everything can change from year to year, but like you can play the confidence, the overconfidence, and then in 2 years be like, oh yeah, this guy's got a real good chance of being the 101 to the 104 because his team is aged out a little bit and it's not quite as good as where it once was. And so a lot of the times if I'm a rebuilder and I can't get something done in that I want in that packages, like I took over an Orphan last year and I just kicked that can down to 26, but I was trying to trade Kyron Williams because he was one of the only assets that I had and nobody would give me a first in that draft class. So I just kicked the can down the road and I targeted somebody who has an older team that's good right now. So they're flippant with the first. They're like, yeah, sure, I don't care. That first, it's going to be a late first. Well, I don't care. And by the time you get to 27, I have better odds than not of that being a better pick than he expects it to be. So.
Yeah. I guess last question, with these first round picks, are you more of the strategy of don't trade your first round picks? They're really valuable if you decide halfway through the year that you want to rebuild, like you want to have that first moving forward, or are you more trade your first for assets, or does it really depend on the team?
Oh, it's all team dependent for me. We do like a lot of roster reviews that, people purchase from us. And the most devastating thing is when, like I said with that other guy, like when you get in there and you don't have the next year's so you're not even getting rewarded for, like, you need to safeguard your first, because it's the only thing that, like, is basically, and this is you guys talk about some finance stuff, like the amount of interest that picks gain down the line, their insurance, number one, because they can't really go up. They're typically only going up, and they're not really going to lose value. So, like, you should safeguard them to some extent. Now, like, I got a team that I went in productive struggle wise to start, which means, like, I wasn't planning on winning. I drafted younger guys at a bunch of value. And then, so I wait a year or two, and then I'm swallowing up as many picks as I can. And then I'll get to a point where I reverse that, where I go, all right, now my picks are going out, and I'm down to buy the older guys, because now I'm 2 years in. I know which guys are scoring points, where I might have a hole or two. I'll go buy some veterans, and now I'm a little more okay with getting rid, because I'm not in danger of, like, my first next year being the 101, right? If I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be a top 6 team, then I'm much more okay with sending away a first. Like, once I'm competitive and I'm in that mindset for that 2-3 year window, I'm much more okay with getting rid of the picks, but never a bad idea to have picks.
Yeah, that's that struggle basically is what I did with that team that just won this year that had Saquon, J-Train, Kyron. Like, I had some of the pieces. I had Jonathan Taylor, St. Brown, Kyron. But I definitely had some holes, and I'd accumulated like 6 first round picks in 2 years, like over 25, right. 26, including 2 101s. And just started trading away firsts to get Saquon, Joe Mixon, sent Rodgers and Khalil Shakir for Baker to a team that's rebuilding.
Nice.
So I think part of that
exactly
is
right. Just right.
Part of that is like hoarding picks if you're not good, and just trying to trade back and get that value. Yeah. And then the other part of it is like really hitting on second round picks, like I've done with guys like Shakir.
Right.
And then not being afraid to trade those guys if like a guy like Shakir, like he's good, he gets a lot of targets, catches everything, Josh Allen loves him, but for my team, if I'm contending, he's not going to be a guy I'm going to start because he's not in that top 12 elite. He's not getting me those points. So I'm going to trade him to someone that thinks like, oh, this is a huge upgrade for my flex. I'm going to bundle him with something else to then get an elite player.
Right. Yeah. Shakir, the bundle part is the key there, because you don't want to trade away somebody like Shakir by themselves. You want to use Shakir as somebody to get a big trade over the hump to go back to get an elite prospect, because he's not going to garner enough value by himself, and it's just going to, like, you're going to be talking about seconds. Yeah. And what he in a big deal, he can be worth more than a second, but when it's a standalone player, sometimes hard to get the correct value on somebody like that. Yeah. So.
Also, like for some teams, it makes sense to trade for a guy like Shakir.
Sure, yeah,
absolutely. If he's like the last piece in your
flex or something like that, and you need that, then and again, everybody plays differently, and everybody has different values, and you could be listening to this and not agree with a single thing I said, but that's what, like, if we all had the same values, there would be no fun and no trades would ever get done. So that's kind of what makes this all work.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys don't have any other questions, then where can people find you?
You can get us on any platform that you have podcasts, the FF Dynasty. You can watch us on YouTube, the FF Dynasty. So Twitter at the FF Dynasty, YouTube or Instagram, TikTok, just kind of started messing with those. So you can find us on any of those platforms. And I'll say one more thing. If you guys haven't done like auction startups, it's my favorite way to do a startup. And it's really like, if you can have a commissioner who's down with it to keep the rookie drafts as auctions too, fun, different wrinkle to play with, completely changes the game with trading. And the thing I like about auction startups is you don't have to worry about the trading in draft. So like for me, who I don't have a lot of like, to get the best out of a startup, you got to be trading around. I don't have time in my schedule to be sitting there on like a 7-day startup to be milking these trades on and off. So the auction there, now I'm not beholden to the pick number that I had. I can just spend the money to get who I want, right? So if you haven't done that and you're into the Dynasty wheelhouse, you should try the auction startups. And if you have an advantageous commissioner, keep it as auction rookie drafts. Auction rookie drafts are so much fun.
The last thing that I'll say is Nick does a great job as the commissioner of our league. He mentioned they
don't get enough love. They need more love. It sucks. It's
mediating conflicts all the time.
But something he does, he mentioned the rules meetings that we have. We all get on Zoom or FaceTime once a year and do that meeting in the off season. And something that he does as the commissioner is he makes this PowerPoint with like superlatives and like funny stats from the year. And it's a great time that we all look forward to. So if you can, that's like just one of those things about Dynasty where you can like build those things into the league that it just becomes even more fun. But yeah, like the reason we play is because it's fun and also because we want to win. If you haven't played Dynasty, I highly recommend switching your league over to a Dynasty league.
Yeah, you got 12 good guys who you guys have been playing redraft together. That's a good stepping stone to kind of get into there.
Yeah,
I think that'd be great.
All right, thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.